So the best advice I've received thus far is real estate. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? Like it's simple in the fact that like we're not the first real estate agents to ever do this, right? There's been millions, I think millions or hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of real estate agents before us, and the game plan is laid out. We know exactly what we need to do. Like we need to make calls, we need to follow up. Like it's already laid out for us, but it's not easy in the sense of like you have to put in a lot of time, you have to put in a lot of effort. A lot of it is based on how you want to run your business. So like we know, like simple in the sense of, okay, like if you talk to someone and then they say, hey, I'm not interested right now, right? But they're not interested right now, but they could be interested in 6 months or a year. So you need to keep touching that person. And then the next time you talk to them, 3 months later, they'll say, hey, I'm actually, I'm thinking about buying in a year, right? So making sure that you follow up with them, right? But then now, if this is one person, but now you got 500 people or like 1,000 people that you need to follow up with all the time. So now you got to make sure that you have systems in place so that you can follow up with everyone that you need to follow up with. But also at the same time, this is just follow up potential of getting business, but what about the business that you have in hand, right? Like you got to take your buyers to go on showings. You got to do your listing appointments. You got to do all this. So it's a huge juggling act, and you have to make sure that you stay not only consistent but organized, right? Organization is key, and you probably have already heard this word, but systems, right? Like make sure you have your systems in place. Learn X, Y, and Z system. Learning from this person, learning from that person. And me coming into this, not being in real estate, I was like, systems, I don't really know. Like, it's a loaded word, right? It's a lot that goes into it. But as I'm getting more into it, systems, it basically just means that how you like do things or like how you structure things or the way that you plan on following up with people, right? Like that's a system, right? Making sure that you input them into your CRM, making sure that you touch them via email every 2 weeks, putting them on certain plans to touch them, call them, right? So stuff like that. And so that's the best. Going back to the original question, that's the best advice that I've been given, because it's like it's simple, but it's not easy. You know exactly what you need to do. You got to call people. You got to door knock. You got to like it's already laid out in front of you, right? And then also if you think about the conversion rate. So your conversion rate, if you have a 10% conversion rate, you're amazing. You're like literally amazing, and you are probably going to go down in the Hall of Fame of real estate. Like 10%. But to get 10%, you got to talk to 100 people. That means 90 people are going to say no. 90 people are going to say no, right? So in actuality, it's much lower than that. Like for conversion rate rise, I think most people will have like a 2 to 4% conversion rate. So they got to talk to 100 people. 100 people, you're going to get 4 people. So you got to get used to like rejection. So that's something that I've luckily, working as a recruiter, you're making cold calls. Like, hey, it's not that big of a deal. But that's something that I've seen other agents struggle with. So it really depends on where you're coming from and your mindset as well. So hope that answered your first question.
Yeah.
And so you just got to keep at it. It's all about consistency, right? So you just got to keep at it, keep working those numbers, keep making those calls, keep messaging literally anyone and everyone. And then you'll eventually, I feel like, I'm so new. I'm only 4 months in, but I feel like this is a game of attrition, right? It's who can last the longest with being consistent. Right. I'm not sure if you know the statistics, but 87% of agents aren't in the business anymore. I think after 2 years, 87%. That's crazy. So like most people that you come across with, like that they say they're agents, most likely they're not going to be there in 2 years. Right. So that means, I'm hoping that we're the other 13%. Right. So it's just, you got to keep at it. You got to keep grinding. Yeah.
And that was another reason why I personally chose Coldwell's, because they have resources in place when helping with your business plan to kind of steer you away from that turnover, so they can keep you on track. What do we need to do to help you, help us? And I like that, because having my own business is new to me. and I want to make sure that I'm staying successful but not getting discouraged. And I feel like that's so true because it is. I see what you mean. Like it's easy, but it's not because there's a lot of work, and especially when you're new, it's just all new territory, and you just got to keep on top of it and keep motivated too.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, and the big thing is, coming into real estate, it depends on where you're at, right? Because for me, as I said before, I came in with a recruiting background. So my communication skills were already pretty much there. My emailing skills, my follow-up skills, it was already there. But depending on like what career you're coming from, you're not like when you start off at real estate, you have to learn real estate, you have to learn how to communicate it, you have to learn all of the forms, all of the laws. Not only that, but a lot of agents who come in, they have to learn the communication side of it, right? So if you're trying to learn how to communicate effectively, how to follow up effectively, how to write an email and real estate, it's tough. Like it's tough. Like I think I'm so glad that I worked as a recruiter before, but it also depends. Like I think if you worked a professional job before, it's a little bit easier of a transition because communication. If you work in an environment where you have to deal with email all the time, like that prepares you way more than if you were coming off of, let's say, like straight from high school, right? Or even, I mean, I'm not saying that you can't do it, you can do it, but
Sure.
You have to learn those other skills too. So
absolutely.
yeah.
And customer service, it sounds like for both you and I, if it's inherent to you, those are skills you can't be taught. So I think it's easier for us to persevere and make it past that hurdle of 1-2 years from now because it comes naturally to us, and it's easy for us compared to some to do that part of the job, the customer service, the following up, the emailing, the communicating, than someone who is very new to that whole concept. And so I think that will benefit us, and I think we will come out the 13%.
Right. And I think that customer service piece is so huge. Like I take that like very seriously. For me, if my client texts me a question or asks me a question, I'm going to get back to them as soon as possible. Like I'm a drop everything type of person. And my clients respect that and they love that. And they say, wow, you got back to me within 5 minutes, right? They're like, hey, I have a question on this. I get back to them within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or whenever I see the text, right? And the speed is very crucial, especially when you're working with buyers, right? Because they want to know certain things, especially working with new home buyers. Like for me, I'm there to educate you. I'm there as a consultant for you, but I'm also there to answer any questions that you may have. And questions pop up, and I get back to them ASAP. And also the transparency piece of it, right? Like, hey, if I mess up, I'll let them like, hey, I'm sorry, I got the information wrong. And or what I said a couple days ago, it's actually I was able to look into it, and here's actually what it is, right, or whatever it is. I think just owning up to the fact that it's because sometimes you're gonna make mistakes, right? But the mistakes I've made, I've learned from, and but I'm also transparent because there's been a couple times where I'm like, oh, like I did that on accident, but I didn't know, right? But then I'm like, hey, client, like I just want to be fully transparent with you. I made a mistake. It won't happen again. But they're like, oh yeah, it's not even a big deal, right? It's like I don't care. They're like, they don't care, but they appreciate that I'm so honest and transparent with them, right? So
when it keeps that trust between you two solid, and they're not wondering if are you going to keep making mistakes or whatever. So I think that's very beneficial in establishing your credibility and owning up to it.
Right.
And that's really good to know that you embrace those. I feel like you'll have more failure or mistakes than if you don't own up to them, because then you're not learning from them. So I feel like that's helpful.
Right.
And eventually you have more things to be rewarded for, and all of the positives and fewer negatives.
Yeah, and with real estate, it's yes, you're under a brokerage, you're under a firm, but you largely can run your business however you want to run your business, right? So there's different styles. I've seen a couple different styles already, though my style is if I can get you the answer, I will, right? Because we're real estate agents. Our scope of practice is only within a certain frame, or it only extends so far. Like we're not appraisers, we're not loan professionals. We're not supposed to. We can advise on it and what we know, But for me, I've worked with a few agents that say, hey, we don't do loans. Like just refer them, defer to the loan professional. But for me, it's like if I can find the answer, why wouldn't I, right? But I also preface like, hey, because if they have loan questions, I'd be like, okay, so I'll give them, I'll be able to answer their question, but I also caveated at the end say, but also I'm not a loan professional. Please consult a loan professional, right? But if I can get you the answer, why not?
Right.
Because I want to take that next step or take that step further. Because like I'll give you a perfect example. Uh, when you're buying a property and they have an additional dwelling unit, an ADU in the back, and is it permitted? Is it not? How's it going to affect? Like what's all going to be needed, right? Some agents would say, "Hey, buyer, that's your own due diligence. You call the city, you call the planning department, and you take care of that. Like it's not within my scope, and they'll just defer to, and then they put it on them, right? But for me, I'm go, hey, let me try to get you the answer. Let me call the planning department. Let me call the city, and then I'll give you their number. But if I can dig up information, I'm going to dig up more information for you, right? Because I'm taking the step to find them the number. And sometimes it might seem like you're, like holding their hand, but at the same time, it's good for us because now we know where to go, what to do, and then now you have that planning department's number, so that if it comes back in the future, you know what to do. So, like for me, I like to take that extra step, and I think with my clients, they've really noticed. They're like, "Wow, I've worked with a few other agents, and they always, like they're not willing to go that extra step." But whereas you are, like I have this one client, he's just like every time I communicate with him, like because like I'll respond to him within 10 minutes or whatever. He'll be like, oh my God, thank you so much. You're such a rock star. And I can't tell you how glad I am that we're working together now because you're so communicative. You're so transparent. I'm like, and I don't even like, I'm just doing my job. Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just crazy. So